Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lindsay Eberhardt, and I'm Program Associate at the Institute for Sustainability Engagement based in Syracuse, at Syracuse University. And I will pass it to Morgan to introduce themselves right now.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. My name is Morgan Ingram. I'm also a program associate at the Institute for Sustainability Engagement at Syracuse University, otherwise known as ISE, and really excited to be here talking with you all today.
And this is our mini pod discussion conversation all about the journey that Morgan and I have been on over the past year to create a tool lending library here in the Adirondacks of New York State.
And just a quick funding disclaimer that part of this project, the funding was provided by the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute through the Environmental Protection Fund, as administered by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation.
Perfect. Okay, so to start us out, we got to set the scene. Morgan, can you tell us what is a tool lending library?
Absolutely, yeah. So for those who may not know, a tool lending library is just like a regular library, like a library of books, except that you rent tools from there instead of books. But this is also a part of a larger umbrella of something called a library of things. So you can find libraries of things all over the world, and these can be libraries where you can rent things like small appliances, sewing machines, even clothing sometimes, and also tools. So a tool library is specifically where you rent tools. And tool libraries can look a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different structures. Some of them are smaller and more informal. Some of them are larger and very brick and mortar and set up like libraries are. Some of them are even businesses. So they have a lot of really cool benefits to communities. And some of those are economic, some of those are environmental, and some of those are for the community itself. The economic benefits to a tool library, and this also extends to libraries of things too, just keep that in mind, is that they can save individuals a ton of money. Buying new products, especially today, is incredibly expensive. So if you're renting things that you don't necessarily need to own, it saves you as a consumer, an individual, a whole bunch of money. Also, they can offer dignified pathways out of poverty for those who are really struggling in our society. So, not only can they offer discounts and even sometimes free rentable items to those who are really suffering, especially if a tool library partners with a humanitarian organization that's local, but they also create a ton of jobs. And so, there's a lot of workplace development and a lot of ways that people can get involved, especially if they've been formerly incarcerated or they're recovering from addiction or they're facing other challenges to getting hired elsewhere. These systems create a whole bunch of job opportunities for those people. And then it also just strengthens small and local businesses as well. You can partner with a whole bunch of local community organizations and businesses with your tool library. Environmentally, tool libraries help by reducing unnecessary consumption of new or raw natural resources. So instead of having to dig up natural resources, harvest, mine them from the environment, and then manufacture them through all different types of processes, and then transport them to the consumer, that all of that is cut out with a tool library, and instead you are just reusing materials, tools that already exist in the community itself. So that is just hugely beneficial for environmental reasons. It lowers carbon emissions on so many steps of the production process line, and it can really help divert waste from landfills and incinerators. To the community, there are a whole bunch of benefits as well. So it can really foster skill sharing amongst members and especially intergenerational skill sharing. It can also create community gathering spaces, those third spaces that a lot of people have been hearing about these days that we all really crave and need. It also can provide very important educational opportunities via repair workshops or DIY workshops or other kinds of events that you can host at the tool library. And it also can provide local disaster relief. And we actually have an example of that with the hurricanes in South Carolina and North Carolina recently. Um, And then it can build a sense of shared ownership and collective responsibility for your house and your community and your tools. And those are some of just the many benefits that tool libraries have.
Some of the many. It's amazing that with one project and like one concept, it can just create so many different ripples into so many different areas where we need that positive change. So I love tool libraries. Thank you,
Great.
Morgan.
Yeah. So I really wanted to hear about our project specifically from you, Lindsay, because you've really been the boots on the ground where we are working on this project together. And like I said, through P2I, this project that we have applied for and got awarded, I'd love to kind of just hear about what the Northeastern Tool Library is all about and why did you have the idea to start one there?
Okay. So yeah, the Northeastern Tool Library, otherwise known as NETL, its acronym, which is an amazing plant if you don't know, um, is located here in Keysville, New York, in the Adirondacks. It's a small hamlet between the Lake Champlain as well as the Adirondack Mountains. So it's nestled right in between there, along the Ausable River. And yeah, there's a really strong culture here in agriculture as well as neighboring, I'll say. There's a really beautiful effort to really lean on one another here in Keysville. And I really think that creating the tool lending library is a side effect of that, of bearing witness to that. Since I've moved here, I really saw that there was this push to share and lean on one another. And yeah, the local librarian here in Keysville kind of approached me because I was connected to the Grange organization in town with the idea to start a tool lending library. This is something that she's been wanting to do for a very long time, and yeah, the stars kind of just aligned to make it happen. We found that there was a space available at the Grange that I was involved in the lower level of this old stone building from the late 1800s. There's a beautiful basement that was just ready to become a tool lending library. So that really worked out in the favor of the project. And yeah, Robin Prey, the librarian here in Keysville, really also brought a beautiful energy and excitement and motivation to the project. And of course, she's a librarian, so she already had that under her belt. And I'm really grateful to her support and her idea to bringing the tool library here to Keysville. And yeah, also it was wonderful working with Morgan on the project. I really appreciate all the help that you've done from afar to make this project happen because, yes, there's lots of boots on the ground work that happened, but there was also lots of computer work that also occurred to make the project come to life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Some of the things, for those who don't know, I'm based in Syracuse while Lindsay is based in Keysville, right there where the nettle is created and still being, developed. And my main role for the project was a lot of the grant administration side of things. So, helping to write the grant, helping to make sure that we're meeting the deliverables, and then I just take care of all of the grant reporting. And that is specifically for the P2I grant that we were awarded.
Mhm.
And Lindsay does, I guess, everything else pretty much.
Let's tell them about all the things we've been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Lindsay, I would just love to, ask you some questions about that nettle process
Hmm.
of being in person and developing the tool library. And I will start off with what was the initial startup like for the tool library, just from scratch? Did you learn from or model this library off of any other existing tool libraries?
Hmm. Well, yeah, I referenced already kind of like the way start and how the idea kind of came to be. But definitely early on was looking towards other tool lending libraries in the state specifically. There's some really great examples here in New York. The Buffalo Tool Library, and I know there's a tool library in Rochester. Do you remember the name of that one, Morgan?
The Seek tool shed, I believe.
So we definitely got some support and learned a lot from them as well. And I know there's a tool lending library in Albany as well. Additionally, we were looking at the Library of Things toolkit from Shareable. We found that that was a tremendous resource, and it just so happened to be released as we were getting this project off the ground. So, yeah, very early on, we were always like looking out to see what other tool libraries were doing. We definitely were not trying to reinvent the wheel, but also understanding that all tool libraries are different and all communities require different things. So, we were kind of like taking what made sense from these different tool libraries and trying to implement them here.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that's really helpful for a lot of people to know. I think a lot of people are interested in this idea, but might not be sure where to start. So that's
Hmm.
really great.
Yeah.
And to that end, my next question is, how did you find the physical space for the tool library? I know that's an issue for a lot of folks.
Yeah. Um, I think the collaboration between the Keysville Free Library as well as the Grange, it does kind of seem like this was a situation where all the pieces were kind of in place before the idea even came to be. Me being involved in the Grange and Robin being involved in the tool lending library, in the Keysville Free Library, excuse me. So yeah, we really lucked out. The Grange building itself was undergoing a period of revitalization. Super old building, like I mentioned, and the lower level was just filled with like stoves from the early 1900s, just lots of antiques and things that you collect in a basement over the many years. So luckily, just before we had this idea, a lot of Grange members took it upon themselves to kind of clear the space, not knowing what was going to be there next, just knowing that this space was not being properly utilized and we need to create space. And yeah, so I'm so grateful for all of those people who worked on that because, yeah, they literally opened the door for this project to come to be. But I really, yeah, value that collaboration between the free library as well as the Grange for allowing the tool library to exist in its space. And it's a super small space. It's a maybe like 12 by 12 around there. It's really small. But what I've learned is you can actually do a lot with a little space and you can get really creative with storage options. And I have, peg boards all over the walls and a lot of things are hung up and we've created new shelving. And so you really don't need a lot of space, especially depending on who you're trying to serve. So this is a really small community here. So we didn't need a warehouse size tool library.
Yeah, yeah. And I love speaking to, really the message is look at your community first, right?
Hmm.
For people who are interested in starting or maybe, building onto an already existing library, but adding tools, that's a really good point. Make sure that you're paying attention to what your community already has. What do they need? That's
Hmm.
great. And then, yeah, I guess, is there, speaking to that, different structures and paying attention to your community and what your capacity is like and all of that, what is the structure of the Nettle more so like? Is it a nonprofit? Is it more informal? Is it a business? How
Hmm.
did you decide on the structure of the Nettle?
Yeah, so currently it is pretty informal, and is really dependent on the strong relationships between the library and the Grange and myself. And we definitely want to move towards a place where it can sort of actualize itself as probably a nonprofit would be the direction that we would go into to so that we'd be able to apply for grants just on behalf of the tool library. But right now, we kind of are using the Keysville Free Library as the main avenue for the way that it is structured. And so basically, the way it looks structurally is that the Tool Lending Library is a project of the Keysville Free Library housed at the Grange. So that's the technical terminology around it. But um, we definitely you need an entity to apply for funding and to receive donations. You kind of need those donations to go somewhere, to open a bank account, so on and so forth. So it's definitely really important to have those details somehow uh, worked out before you kind of start the project or you get yourself in too deep without having those things in place.
Wonderful. Yeah, Lindsay, and I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit here to ask how membership works, and I'll come back around to the tools. Just because on that note, I think you really touched on something important with are you charging membership fees or not? And like you
Hmm.
just said, you would need some sort of entity if you're collecting money of any sort. So what does that look like for the
Right.
nettle?
Well, so we are not officially open yet and accepting members just yet. We're definitely working towards that, but there's a lot of tools that need to be inventoried and archived and organized before we are there. But I can speak to kind of like our visioning around it and what we hope for it. And that is definitely offering the memberships available on a sliding scale option so that financial availability is not a limiting factor in getting access to these tools. So that's first and foremost. We also are under the understanding that, tools cost money, maintaining tools cost money, and we don't want to obviously create a situation where we can't sustain the project because we've created a structure that doesn't support itself in that way that it needs. So definitely exploring fundraising options, exploring um, obviously more grants, constantly on the lookout for reuse grants and ways that we can just build the inventory that way and lean on, organizations that are looking to do this work in the world. Um, also, um, yeah, sliding scale, suggested donation instead of a membership fee. I guess all to say, we're still trying to figure this out. But all in all, we don't want, money to be a limiting factor to all the people accessing this tool. So we're gonna do our best to, create a structure that sustains the library, but also doesn't keep people out from using it.
Absolutely, yeah. That's speaking to some of the different ways that different tool libraries can be structured.
Hmm.
Most of them encourage that, unlike a traditional library, that there is some sort of membership fee, just because of how the tools are, how they work. They tend to be a lot more expensive than books and other items, so that's part of it. But absolutely, depending on your community and what you want to do, that can doesn't have to happen. It can look a bunch of different ways.
Hmm.
And coming back to the tools, speaking of, so how did you collect the tools? How are you collecting the tools? But especially in the beginning, how did you first get your hands on tools for the tool library?
I first got hands on them from just word of mouth. I was telling people I was starting a tool lending library, and people were very eager and excited to clean out their garages and tool sheds that they haven't been in many years, probably. So that was definitely the start. And then I did host a couple events at the tool library where I just had open hours and I said, hey guys, I'm over there. Please bring your tools and come on down, check out the space, learn about the project. Definitely put a lot of flyers around town, created social media, and tried to get the word out in that way. Yeah, those were a few of the ways, but most of the tools truly have come from donations in town, from other residents that are looking to share their tools. Sometimes that is the driving force. They're like, I have this lawnmower, sit-on lawnmower that like I use rarely, and it would make me feel better to know that other people are using it and it can be shared amongst people who need it. And then there's people who donate because they just want to declutter. And there's people, there's a whole spectrum, and some people do a little bit of both, and it's all welcomed. All the tools are tools at the end of the day, and we welcome tools of any sort.
Wonderful. Lindsay, in the middle of that, your internet went out just a little bit. So we got that it was word of mouth and then we got social media. So if you don't mind just
Word
filling
of
in
mouth,
maybe.
social media, and flyers for sure. We sent out a lot of flyers around town. And then I also shared, I don't know if this came through, but I hosted a few kind of like open houses where I was in the tool lending library for a few hours on like a Saturday. And I, made sure people were aware of that and through social media, and people came down with their tools and checked out the space, learned about the project, and yeah, met some new friends too.
That's awesome. I love
Yeah,
that. As a community building
right.
opportunity as well, that's really cool.
Exactly.
Thank you. And yeah, on the tools topic,
Hmm.
how do you label the tools? I don't know if people first starting a tool library may think of this, but this actually ends up being a really important question to ask yourself. So, how do you label the tools? And you spoke already a little of how you store them, but if there was anything else about the storage as well.
Yeah, this was definitely a question that I spent a lot of time with, and Morgan and I learned, sat on a lot of calls with other people, went on to internet forums asking people, how do you do this? Um, And I think it's another one of those things where there is no one right way, and you kind of have to figure out what works for you. But the thing that I learned, and the thing that I think is important, is to have multiple forms of labeling on every tool so that if one fails, you have a backup. So, for example, we use a label maker that we print labels from. We tape that on, and then we also put a piece of purple tape around the tool, and then I also spray paint the tools with a lime green. So there's multiple ways that people can look at that tool, and when it's, sitting amongst all of their tools, probably, they can be like, oh, that's a nettle tool, that's a nettle tool, and be able to easily identify and hopefully then take care because those are tools that we're sharing with other people. We need to make sure that they're tended for appropriately. So those are the big things that I do. It's the labeling, tape, and spray paint.
Awesome. With uploading the tools to any kind of, database, I know a lot of tool libraries use different kinds of software for letting residents actually almost like shop for, like see.
Hmm.
Sometimes even they can rent the
Hmm.
tools online. Do you have anything like that?
Yes, we use My Turn, which is a really cool software that's specifically was designed to support tool lending libraries or libraries of things rather in these efforts. And yeah, it's really easy to use, it's accessible, and it creates an awesome way for all the community members who have access to internet to see what's currently available in any given moment, depending on what's been taken out or not. And I think that's really awesome that people can, instead of going there, they can online visit and just see what's available. I think that's really important and key.
Yeah, yeah. This is actually a question that I had. If people aren't as internet savvy, do you
Hmm.
have like a non-internet? Like, do they have to go through my
Mm,
turn, or can you do my turn for them when they show up in person? Just say, hey,
absolutely.
I heard about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and most people, even though that we're not officially open right now, a lot of people have still been borrowing tools because I'm just excited and I want to share the tools with folks. And so the way it's been happening right now is word of mouth. People learn that we have a rototiller and they'll call the library or they'll call the Grange or they'll call me and I'll just, meet them down there and they'll pick it up. And a lot of people are older and yeah, aren't on the internet. And even when we are on the internet, we'll probably just do it that way. And I think that's a really good point, and I want to make sure that, we think of ways to keep it accessible and make sure, like maybe having a list of what tools we have separate from my turn would be great.
Cool. Yeah. And how have you been engaging with the community? I know you've been mentioning word of mouth a bunch. So definitely word of mouth is a
Hmm.
great community engagement tool for your community. How else have you been getting people involved?
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely speak to a recent event that we had. We had an open house event, which we incentivized through free pizza and some live music and raffle prizes. And the whole purpose of the event was just to welcome the community into the space, to see it with their eyes, to see how things are organized, to learn about the project and maybe even get excited about it and maybe figure out how they can get involved, whether that's donating, borrowing, volunteering for workshops. Um, so that was really awesome. We just had that recently, and yeah, we had a great turnout from the community and met a lot of new faces. And I think that's a really powerful way to engage the community is just like welcoming them into the space and showing them.
Yeah, yeah, letting them see it. I love
Yeah,
that. Speaking of,
exactly.
you mentioned workshops. You had a workshop there, right?
Yeah, we've actually had multiple workshops, and that's a big component of the nettle is not only lending out tools, but also sharing with people who want to learn how to use the tools because even for me, every day I'm down there and I'm like learning new tools and like I'm like I need to brush up on these skills if I'm gonna be a tool librarian. So yeah, that is really an important component for us, and we basically welcome any skill shares in the community from intermediate to experts. You know, you don't have to be like a crafts person in that regard, but just welcoming people who want to share a skill. We had a how to repair sheetrock, like a hole in your sheetrock. And we made like a mock sheetrock wall and like punched a hole in it. And then we all together in the tool lending library fixed it. And I think that was, yeah, a really powerful and wonderful experience for a lot of folks.
That's so exciting. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just we're almost done. I just want to end with any advice or something that you wish you knew before starting.
I would say, first of all, like take your time if you can. You know, these things, like I think a slow build is okay and like building with care is important. I also think it's really important to just keep in mind that, yeah, while there are many models and examples of tool lending libraries, to really just make sure you're catering to your very own community because every community is so unique in that sense. And I think this is a really great way to practice that. So yeah, that's what I would say to that.
I love that. Yeah, planning ahead of time is always a good idea.
Yeah, ex exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Morgan. It was fun to talk to you about the tool lending library today.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience and the story of the nettle. It's just such a wonderful project, and I'm so grateful for, you creating this with me and, that this is going to be something that's going to exist into the future is
Hmm.
just so beautiful. So thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Morgan. I'm so excited to see what it evolves into. You know, we're just at the beginning here.
Yeah, absolutely.
All
Um,
right.
with that, I just want to also thank P2I, some of our wonderful funders and um, close out. Anything
Yeah,
else, Lindsay?
I'm all set. Thanks, Morgan.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.